Today is a great day to live in your freedom. My name is Leah Mentor, and this is the Freedom Church News. Freedom Church services are live streamed via Facebook Live from our Freedom Church Houston page each Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please tune in for a life-changing word. Every Tuesday night, Freedom Church will stream our new weekly series entitled Points of Freedom. On our Facebook page each week, we want you to offer a short inspirational moment to continue to push you toward your place of freedom. You can also play past episodes on our YouTube page. Wednesdays are for Bible study. Freedom Church joins forces with Pastor Marvetta Walker and our sister church, Fresh Wind Christian Fellowship, for weekly Fresh Lens Bible study on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Visit www.fchouston.org or our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram for ways to call in to this hour of power. Are you looking for a place to worship and to serve authentically? Freedom Church is looking for volunteers to assist with the work of ministry. Areas of opportunity are praise and worship, including singers and musicians, Freedom Cares Outreach Ministry, setup and breakdown crews, as well as sound crew. If you're interested or to get more information, please sign up at www.fchouston.org. Giving at Freedom Church is easy. To give, simply visit our website and click donate, or to give by using cash, simply use the tag $Freedom Church, HOU, or by using PayPal at Freedom Church Houston. For more information on Freedom Church and any events or outreach activities, please visit our website at www.fchouston.org.
Well, good evening, my Freedom Nation friends and family. My name is Sean Stewart. I am the senior servant at Freedom Church right here in Houston, Texas. It is my honor to be with you on this evening. We are doing some work this week on mental health and ministry, and I have gotten connected to some of my friends, my colleagues, my partners, my ride or dies that don't just practice professionally and their faith personally. They actually do both simultaneously. They practice and live their faith as their profession, as they're serving in their work. And so I got them together this week. I've requested their presence. They're joining me on tonight to actually help us dig into what does mental health and ministry look like and how can we bring the two together. If you are at any level of ministry, any level of servant leadership, if you are any kind of spiritual leader, then you know the people that you preach to, that you pray with, that you led in March are not the same people that are with us in October, and probably will not be the same people mentally and emotionally when we arrive back to actually having in-person worship services. And so I wanted to kind of get some people in place that could help us frame this conversation, that can help us bring a clear eye on what to look for when we are seeing things. What questions do we ask? When do we decide that this is beyond the scope of me as your pastor? Let me connect you with someone that's in mental health, that's in therapy, that can help you resolve this issue. I'm here to pray with you, but this is beyond the scope of what I can do. Let me get you connected to someone. How do you determine that, and what does that look like? So the first person I want to bring on is my friend. She is my sister. She pastors all the way in the fine state of New York. She is a senior pastor and servant of Restoration Temple Ministries. She is a professional therapeutic servant in, I think, in New Jersey. Please welcome to this show, Pastor Rose Hardy. Good evening, friend.
Thank you for having me here. I'm honored and consider it a privilege to have this platform with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Tell us about what you do in New York and your profession, your church, your ministry. Tell us just a little bit about you.
Well, I'm the senior pastor of Restoration Temple Ministries. I've been the senior pastor for 2 years. My covering is Apostle Yvonne M. Harrison, who founded Restoration Temple Ministries about 10 and a half years ago. And I have a dual role, if you will. My profession is that I'm a mental health clinician. I've been a mental health clinician for over 30 years with a community hospital in New Jersey. And so I've been in a unique situation, being able to be in ministry for about 23 years total. and mental health work close to 35. And so I have this incredible bridge that I'm blessed and privileged to be able to work together to not only meet people's spiritual needs, the needs to address their soul salvation, but to also recognize the dimension of their being, their mental wellness. I avoid the term mental illness. I prefer the term mental wellness, but the two are bridged together, and I'm privileged to be in a position to do that and have platforms to share the information.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So the second person I want to bring to this table, when I met her, she was my supervisor, and we just became the best of friends. And we have worked tight together the last 3, maybe 4 years, and we ride or die in the world of education. So her name is Dr. LaKanya Nelson. She is right here in Houston, Texas with me, and I want to bring her to this conversation. Hello, my friend, Dr. Nelson. You're on mute, my dear.
And how often do we say that in our meetings? Hello again, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for joining us on today. Would you share with us what you do, where you are, give a shout out to your church and pastor just for a second or two?
I sure will. I will start off with my church. I am a member of New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, Northeast, where my father, Pastor F. Ray Nelson, is the pastor. Hi, Dad. At church, I am the youth director. I am the church secretary, and I believe my dad believes I'm his personal secretary. In the educational world, I am the senior manager of special populations for KIPP Texas in Houston. And I oversee, we just hired a new LPC who will be doing all of the counseling as related services for our students with disabilities. So I oversee the LPC. I also have my own private practice where I do some mental health therapy myself, and I teach 4 classes between 2 universities.
Oh, so you just a little busy, Dr. Nelson. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. I want to bring to the platform my friend, my brother, all the way from Los Angeles, California, the Martinez Sellers. He is a good friend, a good brother. He is in ministry also that way. And he also is a therapist out there. Welcome to the conversation, Marty.
Listen, thank you so much. And congratulations on your bishop designate. I got nothing but love for your pastor. You've been my personal pastor and bishop for a number of years now.
Yes, sir. Tell us about what you do and how things are going in California.
Yes, definitely. Well, again, my name is Martinez Sellers, and I am a marriage and family therapist here in Ontario, California. We're about 30 miles east of Los Angeles, and I kind of have a dual role. I was in full-time ministry for about 15 years, so I do have a master's in theological studies as well, and I serve as a worship leader with my pastor currently, Eastvale Bible Church, with Pastor James Turner. And I had this, you got me on here with these powerhouse people. I had this dual kind of role, and when God pulled me or shifted what I thought going into full-time ministry to do this, I'm not going to lie, I was angry with God because I could not understand, how dare you, and I can say this with you, allow me, God, to get a master's in theological study when I was going in this direction of becoming a pastor, and you pulled and shifted my entire path. Best thing he could have ever done. God knows our plans. And as a result now, God be praised in that, I have my own agency, Marcel Consulting and Mental Health Services, where we have about 15 therapists, 12 parenting coaches, and we're now starting a foster family agency specifically with those children who have been removed from their families due to ICE and getting them into the homes and everything. So God is doing some amazing things with us here in Los Angeles and San Bernardino, Riverside counties. And I'm just blown away. And so this conversation that we're having is so well needed as we bridge that whole thing with ministry and mental health.
All right. Thank you so much. So the last person I'm bringing in is my right hand. He keeps me together at Freedom Church, he and Pastor Dawson. It is our very own Pastor Justin Bertrand Pitts, who is associate pastor at Freedom Church. Want to bring him in. Hey, Rev, how you doing, man?
Hello. I'm well. How are you?
Well, tell us about what you got going on that side of Houston and how things are going around there.
Well, like you said, my name is Justin Bertrand Pitts. I am a certified anger resolution therapist, a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and my full-time work, I'm the executive director and co-founder of a mentoring organization called Men Incorporated. It's mentoring, educating, and nurturing. Currently, we serve around 130 young boys, young men between the ages of 8 and 25, around 6 different school districts here within the Harris County area. So my full-time consists of me doing everything from case management to one-on-one interventions or therapy with students, with young men, with their families. And then, of course, Freedom Church, helping out where I can with Freedom Church. Yeah,
because your pastor keep y'all busy. He really does.
There's this guy that's the bishop designee. He keeps us pretty busy. Yeah,
as if there's nothing else to do in life but those two things, right?
Yeah, I can't say too much about that.
That's I'm gonna get us started. I want to ask a question, and I'm gonna start off with Pastor Rose. We'll start with you, and I would love to hear from each of you for about a minute or two about what ministry is to you practically, like an application, and then how you see bridging mental health into that conversation. How can we do that? What is mental health? What is ministry? And then how do we bring those two things together from your perspective? And I would love to hear from you, Pastor Rose, and then we'll go to Justin, and then we'll keep moving from there. I'm going to put myself on mute so you all can go ahead. Pastor Rose.
Well, I believe that in God I live and move and have my being. And so ministry for me is helping usher people to a place, forgive the churchy language, to a place where they can live their life in the fullness and the abundance of what God would have for them. In terms of bridging those two things, it's been my experience that, and in fact, I want to say that my life going into ministry made me a better clinician. In terms of mental health, and I work with severe, persistent, and severely ill individuals, I have learned that if I can help activate their spiritual dimension, that can activate a part of their being that they believe and can have hope and faith that they can get to the other side of their severe mental illnesses. So now in the church setting, I oftentimes are dealing with the mental wellness issues of people who may be working in school and appear to be productive. But what I've learned is many people come to faith communities and they have a lot of damage, a lot of baggage. And so it's about trying to help unpack that. I learned a long time ago that some people go to clinics and all the rest go to church. And I'll stop there.
Yes, you are right. They go to clinics and then some go to church. That is a very true statement. All right, come on, my next person.
I think I was next, I think. So the merging of the two. One, we have to realize that the person sitting in the pew has more than just the spiritual that we have to take care of. We have to take care of their mental, their emotional. And most churches, the traditional sense of church was only to come in, get a good word, get a good shout, and go out the door. This COVID, the transition going back to church is going to have to be taking care of the person, the whole person, merging the spirituality, merging their mental health, really seeing the Bible as a tool to help push their mental health forward and to make them comfortable with not only just talking to their pastor, but really seeking professional and professional help, medication, and really seeing that medication is not the devil. And in so many things in our community, it's okay to talk about it. And so I think merging the two, putting mental health and religion together, spirituality together, is really going to have to be about pushing the fact that the Bible is a tool, but mental health and professional therapist is another tool that you have, and they go hand in hand.
All right. So then in that hand in hand, Dr. Nelson, as a practitioner, what should we be looking for as spiritual leaders, pastors? What should we be looking for?
I believe that you should be looking for people who have anxiety, people who may be easily irritated, who are easily angered, who have become withdrawn, who may be at home and they eat it to, relieve stress, and they're gaining a lot of weight. People who are pretty much out of character, people who are talkative and they've become quiet. And then the quiet ones are the ones you really should look after, because those four walls being at home, they say idle time is not your friend. I think back to the question, the original question, I was raised with the pastor saying that the church is for sick people. It is to, to heal the sick, and, God and Jesus, he's the doctor and he's our lawyer and he's our savior, and whatever we need, we come to the church. And a lot of times we go to the altar and we're in prayer and we fast and we pray. And even our elders, they have told us historically, just give it to the Lord. But the Bible also says that you should seek counsel. And I believe I mentioned this to you, Bishop, earlier, that Proverbs is full of scripture that says for us to seek counsel. So when we're seeking the Lord, he has also given us permission to seek counsel. And so I think that's where we can bridge the church and counseling together and go from there.
All right. So, Marty, when we look at that, Dr. Nelson set us up good. When she started talking about in the scripture about counsel, the scripture does talk about wise counsel. What does wise counsel look like from the church, from the pastor to the practitioner? Is there different steps that we should see in that?
Good question. And I say this, in all of our get understanding in what we're doing, and also that because I see a therapist does not negate or make my faith any less. I believe it strengthens our faith, because now the evidence already shows, and we got enough research already shows, that those who are have a faith-based connection while seeing their therapist, and I love the mental wellness, the ability to get over those mental challenges is that much greater. So we have to have the conversations with our pastors that our therapists are not trying to become pastors. No, I want to stay in my lane, you stay in your lane, and I support what you are doing, because you are dealing with spiritual matters and I'm dealing with mental matters. But we do know that the spiritual can affect the mental, and the mental can affect the spiritual as well. We got to do, and I love an integrative approach where we start integrating this together so that we can become stronger and healthier. So with that, I think we have to do some education to our pastors and say, listen, we don't want your jobs. I got a job. And I know what God has called me to do. Even with all of that, stop laughing, Bishop. Even with all of that, like I said, I was angry at God, like I said earlier, but I understood the role and the lane that God has charged me to. And that now is to help pastors along the way. Says, listen, we can do this together, and imagine how much stronger and healthier the body of Christ will be as a result of us working together and not against each other.
Thank you so much. So when we look at this concept of ministry and mental health, and we start looking at how to integrate that, and I love the way you brought that in, that pastors, I don't want your job, and pastors, you shouldn't want my job. I want to put a frame out here about when should pastors make the decision? When should spiritual leaders make the decision that this is beyond the scope of my desk? Like, I got you covered to this part, but I'm not sure if I know how to get you over that hump. And it could be that we're looking at COVID. 2020 has not been fair. Let me just get it out there. 2020 has not been fair. But what 2020 has done is it has exposed people to a different perspective of what God really means, what worship really is. We really took away that we thought that the church, going to the actual facility, was having church. Now we've had learned to mobilize ministry, make it digital, make it social distancing. We had to compile all of those things into one compartmentalized place and make it work. So then what should we be looking at when we start talking about that this is the pastor's line, this is the practitioner's line, and then when do we make the decision that we need to refer out? When should a pastor make that decision, Pastor Rose, when we should say, hey, you know what? I'm your pastor, I get this, but I think I need to send you to somebody else. What would be some examples of that maybe we could give them to help them figure that out?
Well, because I'm in a unique position that the people in my church also know that I'm a mental health clinician, I find myself oftentimes, and I'm going to use the word entangled. I have pastors that send their people to me. What I operate in is, if they're my congregants and my leaders, I might add, if people have felt safe enough to come to me, and there's a certain degree of safety, because again, people know that this is my career, I try to, in my mind, recognize that there's probably should be a limited number of pastoral counseling sessions, because what happens is, if I pick up that person has had some real impaired level of functioning, that things are happening perhaps in their family life, in their careers, because I recognize clinical depression. Situational depression is one thing, but then there's clinical depression. And if we're talking about psychosis, that's a whole nother can of worms. And I'm very clear that I believe in the power of the prayer. I believe that God can do a thing suddenly, but I also recognize that medication can save a person's life. And so I'm pretty clear that as soon as I recognize that we're dealing with something that is a definite clinical diagnosis that I feel comfortable making, I'm very comfortable with talking with an individual. It might be by about the third time we've had a conversation, because I think the longer that I continue to work with a person, it can be a setup. I also hold myself accountable to where I refer people. Every pastor should be familiar with the mental health clinics and services in their community, because if you make a referral and it's a disaster, that person will never come back. And you have a certain responsibility in that. So you have to be able to recognize and know where to refer people to so that it can be a successful outcome. But again, for the pastor that's not a clinician, I think they have to be very careful, because I'm very familiar with many cases of pastors that, in their love for their congregant, in their concern and care, sometimes they prolong a little too long, and then the person doesn't want to be released. They don't want to go to a therapist. They don't want to deal with that because they feel like you've invested in them, they've invested in you, and they want you to continue to do the work. And if you're not skilled, you can have some really bad outcomes. And unfortunately, I've seen it more times than I want to admit. You have to sensitize. I'm in therapy. My congregation knows Fridays, 12 o'clock, don't call me. I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy on and off most of my adult life, not just because I'm in crisis, but to be able to navigate all the issues of my life as a pastor, as a mother, as a daughter, all the dimensions. I could go on and on, but I want to stop.
Mm-hmm. Bishop, can I interject right there? Pastor Rosa says something that's very, very crucial. One, we as therapists should always be in therapy. Just to keep our sanity ourselves, because we got enough therapists out there cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but that's a whole nother thing. But she also talked about pastors recognizing their limitations and realizing what they've gone to school for. See, when I was in my going to seminary, we might get A class, depending upon what your major is in that master's program, a class on spiritual counseling. But spiritual counseling is one thing and mental health counseling is another. See, what Pastor Rose Hardy has recognized is her duty to do no harm, and knows the limitations, and with even in our specialty, because we as therapists have to know what we can do and what we can't not do, and when we need to also refer out to a higher level of care, because our people's lives are are in our hands, and people trust us because I've gone to school. We gone to school. Dr. Nelson, she got a PhD, so she's done more years than the rest of the average than the average bear. She gone and got her PhD, so she could almost sign off and say that they really certifiable. And Dr. Nelson, can you give us some meds too? Because some of us need a little bit more than melatonin. But knowing and recognizing when, yes, I pray, but there could be some chemical imbalances. Everything ain't from the devil. And everything is not demonized. And we have to realize that, because even though some of these pastors have good, their spirit might be wrong, their own personal unprofessional diagnosis has been atrocity and caused more damage than good. And we have to know when to hand off, like she said in that. I'm sorry.
Some feedback on that?
I have taken so many notes because Pastor Sellis and Pastor Rose have brought up so many points. So I think first, let me just say that not only do counselors need counselors, but pastors need counselors, because pastors are the gatekeeper of your parishioner souls. And so you have the weight of the world on your shoulder, and that feeds into your spirit. And so the more that your members put on you, the more it weighs on you. Before we even had the pandemic, if you look at 2018 and 2019, I know that I heard at least 3 or 4 pastors who committed suicide. So pastors also need counseling. I think it's also a mindset. So the difference between psychology and counseling, you got to change the psyche. Reverend Justin brought up earlier that African-American culture in general don't seek counseling, and it's a stigma, but that's also a myth. And so I think when you think about counseling, what is counseling? Everybody actually has sought counseling, whether you know it or not, because all you're doing is going to a safe place with someone you trust, that you're able to just let out everything that's going on with you. And so I encourage you to do so with someone who's licensed, so that they can guide you in the right steps. But it's about changing the mindset. And I gave this example earlier. I said, people don't do counseling officially because they're embarrassed by it, but they'll go to their pastor for prayer, or they'll go to their pastor in lieu of counseling. But the real difference is it's between, let's say, word choice. So mustard and Grey Poupon, they're both mustards. Grey Poupon is just a fancy mustard. So you're still seeking counseling even when you go to your pastor. I think in terms of pastors knowing their limitations, you should always have counselors available. So always have a resource list. Pastor Rose mentioned that you should know the community centers. You should always, because you can't take it for granted. Do your pastoral duties. I don't want to be the pastor. I not in my ministry, but always have that information available just in case, to give people the option and the choice of seeking counseling outside of seeing their pastor. And I think that I saw a comment from a viewer, and it says you have to limit your sessions. You do. And I think after you've seen someone between 3 to 5 times, then I think at that point you can officially say, I think it's time for you to go to a licensed counselor.
All right. So then I want to ask this question. Is there a difference between a life coach, the counselors that we have at the church, like the Christian counselors, the new members orientation counselors, and then the therapists and the counselors outside of the church? How should those things operate within the church? And then how do we refer them out? Because one of the things that you said, Dr. Nelson, and Justin, I'm gonna pivot this to you, is we need to know, and I will use this word, I'm like you, mustard and Grey Poupon is still mustard. But I think that when we say limitations, some pastors will frown on that. I'm the pastor, I don't have no limits. Well, you do. I think it's skill set and language. I totally support what you're saying. But I also think we need to empower them or elevate their thinking by giving them a tool that says that, when you see what you see, you have to know when to call time. You got to know when to say that this is beyond what I do. And that's not weakness, that's wisdom. Wisdom, pastors, is when you know when to say, you know what, this is not my lane. And then when you do counseling as a pastor, and I will put this out there, Marty talked about do no harm. Pastor, if we have pulpit ethics, then we should have parishioner ethics, where when our members come to confide in us, we should take a page out of the Catholic Church and treat it like confession. And then we do no harm. And do no harm means that we don't gossip about in confidence to somebody else about what our members told us in person. Because then if we do tell it, then you have initially, whether you intended to or not, you've done harm to your member. So Justin, I will pivot to you. What are some ways that pastors can say, you know what, this is not my way? What would be a way for them to say that, refer them out, and then not hurt the person's integrity or their ministry? What would be some ideas that we can give them?
Okay, wait, there we go. Okay, so there's this thing called scope of expertise. If I am profound and prolific in tearing the scriptures apart, but the only reference I can come to when a depressed person comes to me is, Jonah was in the belly of the whale, that's really not going to help them. That's outside of your scope of expertise. Once you realize that all you have to pull from is old sayings and colloquialisms, that's outside of your expertise. And it is okay, pastors, ministers, rabbis, preachers, whatever. It's okay for you to say, let me connect you with somebody who may be able to help you a little better. And think of it as a team approach. When we do, Pastor Sean, you do this with special needs kids. When you do your independent learning plans and your parent meetings, there's a team there. There's an IDT team there. Think of it as a team. You're going in as a team. You're referring one of your parishioners who you already have a responsibility for. You're referring them to someone who's safe, that you feel that you're responsible with, who's a part of the team. So to make it worth your while and to make it seem like a team, go in it together. And if it's comfortable with you and that, you're the person that you're passing them off to, you shouldn't have an issue with that. It won't diminish your credibility, but it will tear you up. If you take what they said to you and you preach about it over the pulpit, that's going to tear your credibility down with that one person, and that's going to flow over to the next person and the next person. So it's better for you just to pass it off. Don't take it as somebody throwing something at you being the senior pastor. Be a good senior pastor, be a good leader, and lead them to the next person who could help them.
Awesome. So when we look at this process of migrating ministry and bringing people together to do this work, when we get our members back and we actually start having, let me roll back. When we do wellness checks, I don't know if many of you know, I know people on this panel might know, but when we do wellness checks, one of the things that I do with my members is I randomly call. Now they think it's random, but I actually have reminders in my calendar to actually call this person on this date and time to check on them. And when we do wellness checks, and my friend from Fresh Wind, Pastor Marvetta Walker, she kind of hit me to this. When she calls individually to check on certain members and just to see how they're doing, what's going on with them, how they're doing, if they need anything. And then depending on that conversation, she might go do a drive-by. Well, let me clean that up. She might go by and visit them because, I don't want the street to come out. She go by and visit her members because sometimes we have become great actors. And in the Black community, we give this statement very well. How you doing? Oh, I'm good. I'm all right. You know, things are good. It's copacetic. You know, I'm on 100 over here. No, you on 100 with no lights. You on 100 with no food. You on 100. And there are elements of depression that we can hear in your voices. And then there's evidence we can find in your home. What would be some things that pastors would need to look for when they get their people back that will help them say, you know what, this, not only, I hear the prayer in you, but I think I need to come see you. And when I come see you, what should they be looking for in the responses of their members? If they see these things, what would be triggers for pastors through the wellness check? And we'll start with you, Dr. Nelson.
I think, and you hit the nail on the head when you said, when you call people and you ask how they're doing and they say that they're fine. We need to get to a place where it's okay to say that we're not okay, because we're not always okay. And I think that has to start from the head. Even pastors, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not okay. But you're right, Bishop, when we ask even each other how you're doing, we say fine. And it covers up so much pain. I was in a supervision session yesterday with one of my interns, and she said, I'm tired and I shouldn't be. And I said, but why shouldn't you be? She said, because it's the beginning of the school year and I can't burn out too soon on these kids. I said, but you're invalidating your feelings. It's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to be stuck for a second. People need to learn to be able to say that and be okay with that. And that's going to take me down a downward spiral. So let me just say, when you're doing the wellness check, have the conversation. And again, it goes back to what I said in the beginning. When people just don't seem themselves, when they seem out of character, when they seem down, when they seem depressed, when they seem easily agitated, when they seem angry, when they seem despondent, when they aren't responding to you, those are times. And I think even in ministry right now, every ministry in the church should be reaching out to someone in the church just to say hello, because even that one telephone call or that one text can lift someone's spirit.
Pastor Rose, some feedback on that? I see you nodding back there in the amen corner. Some feedback on that?
Amen. One of the things I was very clear was that I, as the pastor, was not going to be the only person calling and checking and texting and doing drive-bys on the people in my church. I'm dealing with my own issues around the weight of what I've had to deal with pastoring in a pandemic. So I empowered my leaders, many of them who have been very teachable and trainable. And if you're a director or a head of a ministry and you haven't checked on the people in your ministry, I'll use an example. I have an outreach ministry. I have an exceptional director. She's minister in training, Kalita Frey. She's been calling and checking on her people throughout the 6 months of the pandemic, whether or not they haven't been doing outreach. The same with my music department, my men's ministry, my women's ministry right now is in a transition, so it's been more difficult. But I think it's very important that you be developing as a pastor a team of people that can help support, because I agree, the people that come back, I already see the anxiety in people just listening to how they speak to me. And as soon as people right away quickly say to me, I'm all right, I'm good, Pastor, I know they're not. The only people are wearing much more than face masks these days. People are very vested in I'm okay, and they're not okay. I know when I haven't been okay. And so that's part of the reason I try to be so transparent with my people, because I have found, and I'm grateful, I believe that I have a number of people that feel comfortable to come to me with very sensitive issues, anxiety issues that are exploding in the last 2 to 3 months, people's fear, their sense of failure. You know, people joke about quarantine weight. It's devastating for people, particularly women, gaining weight and feeling like there's been a loss of control. Paying attention to my people in recovery, because it's not unheard of. People can have 10, 15, 20 years of clean time. And this season of the pandemic has triggered things. They've had to be with their families more than ever. Children can't hang out with their friends. it's so many layers of things that it's already started, and I see it in my work. So I anticipate when I get back inside the four walls that I am not the only person that has to be prepared. My team has to be prepared.
Cool beans. Let me hear from Marty. Some feedback on that?
You know, Pastor Rose, you're right on target with that and what everyone is saying, because let me say that, you know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month as well. And I think we as a church, we need to be prepared. I grew up in a domestic violent household, and my church knew about it and did nothing about it. So for 16 years, I saw and witnessed my father beat my mother. And the pastor said, he's a good man. He's a great provider. Yeah, he's provided, but he's also providing extra that we don't want. And so in the midst of this COVID, when everyone anxiety has gone up, depression has gone up, and depression looks different in men versus women. We have to look at that, because men, we hold ours in anger, and we have been misdiagnosed as oppositional defiant. But why do we hold it in anger? Because men have not been taught how to express their emotions. We've been taught to shut up, man up, don't be a punk, you're being a sissy, all these things. So I call it the shake and coke syndrome. So now they just shake, and the slightest crack, we explode all over everyone. And see, I told you he was oppositional. I told you he was no good. I told you he was conducted. And we as the church, I'm going to challenge our churches to do a better job of reaching out to men, especially heads of families in our larger cities where they may have lost their jobs and they're not fit. Men associate their worth with their ability to provide. And when you cannot provide like society says you can, then my self-worth and self-esteem goes down. With that as well. So we act out in peculiar ways with that. I'm trying to teach my people how to have self-care. And we cannot think of self-care as being selfish. There's a totally different. Listen, I went away this weekend and unplugged from the world because I needed some self-care. I needed Marty time. I needed not to have my cell phone. I needed not to talk to my mama who lives with me. And I'm raising my mother in this late phase of her life. I need to get away from my 4-year-old. Do not judge me. Yes, I have a 4-year-old. That's a whole nother thing with that. But during this time, and I love what Dr. Nelson said, it's okay not to be okay, and identify when you need to come unplugged from the world, take you a walk, take you a drive, take you a run, do whatever it is so that you can get back to your normal self. Now that's when we need to pray. That's when we need to meditate. That's when we need to get grounded so that we can get back to our true authentic self, because COVID and everything has taken us off of our normal path, which is driving us crazy. I'm not going to say enough because go ahead, Bishop.
All right. So, Justin, when we look at this conversation on how, because what you do as a profession, you mentor boys and young men. And so Marty led me right into my next conversation is how do we support men in this process without demeaning them? Marty, he stole my whole conversation. Like I had a whole question set aside and he just took it. And I'm okay with that because, that lets me know that we right where God needs us to be. When we look at this conversation of depression and oppression and men associating their ability to be a man to their worth, their performance, their contributions, when we see that, because one of the things that we're seeing a lot of, even in schools now, when I was on a school campus, we had a couple of kids who experienced the abuse. And my only way to get a handle on what was going on is when the kid came to school, because then I could see the abuse or I could address the issue. I could get food to the kid. Now that we're home, some of the kids don't have phones. They don't have access to the internet. They've got devices, or they live with their grandmother who is on a fixed income, who's not going to let you send that iPad to their house because they don't want to be responsible for paying for it, because they're not going to let you do that. They're not going to let you send that because then that means they need internet, and they're not going to let you assume another bill in their home. So they're going to tell you no for obvious reasons. But when we look at the men, Marty, you took it, to look at the men, how do we support them without denigrating them, without hurting them? How do we bring them to the level of support without diminishing the foundation that they're standing on? And I'll start with you, and then we'll rotate that up to Dr. Nelson, and then I have another question after that.
I keep forgetting to press that button. Resources. Making sure that that our men, that our males know that there are places that they can get assistance and they can get help from, and no one is going to judge them. No one's going to write about it or call about it. Just make sure that they know that there are places where they can find resources to take back to sustain their own homes for themselves. Marty hit it right on the head. Depression in men, most times it does come out as anger. It comes out in a way that, you know, they don't know how to function. They don't know how to process that well. So it comes out that I either have to drink a lot or I have to smoke a lot, and that processes over into anger. So giving them a safe space, giving men a safe space to find the resources they need to provide for themselves and their families, and then giving them a space to express that you're not by yourself in this. Giving them giving them the space to know that they're not by themselves. Especially Black men, letting our Black men know that COVID took us all for a loop. You're not by yourself. We're in this together, and I'm going to help you just like I'm helping myself. I'm going to help you through this.
And I want to push this a little further. And when we start looking at this thing of ministry, we also have to realize that we, you know, Sundays are segregated. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, you know, people tend to stick with, you know, their race and their cultural distinctions within their religious practices. But what I'm finding is that the needs, when people have a need, that doesn't have a race. Needs do not have a race. Needs do not have a race. And what I'm finding is that people who don't always speak English and who do not always look like the culture of church that you lead come looking for help. And we need to also be prepared to deal with multilingual, multicultural issues. And we need to have some other people in place. So yes, I am saying to you, my brother and sister that pastor churches, you might need to have somebody on your staff who speaks Spanish now, because the need is different than what you were pastoring when you first started out in 2020. And so I do want to flag that for everybody, that you might want to consider now as you're moving forward, as you're building out your plan for 2021, you might want to consider having someone on your team that can deal with other races, other cultures, and speak other languages. Because that is going to be needed, because we have children and families that are becoming homeless now faster than we can keep up with. And based on the current political demographics as we know it, we might not always have resources to support them at this time. And so it does fall back to the church to address that. So we're at the 7:50 minute count. So I want to do a lightning round, if you will. And I'm just going to ask for each person to give me their thoughts on this. Two things that pastors or members need to know when they're checking in on folk, their membership, their friends, their road dogs, their shotgun rider, their good Judies. What are two things that they should ask and look for when they're talking to them to see if everything is okay? And we'll start with you, Justin.
Okay. Well, two things. One, I avoid asking, "Are you okay?" We've already established that people are generally going to say, "Yeah, I'm fine. Things are good." Ask, "How was your day today?" I even asked some of my kids, just run me what you did today. Like, what did you do? What went on? And that'll start the conversation up. Ask them, "What did you eat today?" If you ask them that, and you know, day after day, and you see that they're eating the same thing, that may be a food problem. It may be a red flag that you want to kind of check in on. So for me, I typically ask, you know, "What did you do today? What was on your agenda today?" Something like that. Or, "What did you eat today?" Just to kind of check in and see, did they eat something at all? Did they go anywhere today at all? And just kind of see how it went from there. But I typically avoid asking the question, "How are you?" Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Dr. Nelson.
I think to add on to that, ask maybe about physical activity. If they've gotten out of the four walls, whom have they had conversations with that day? You said two. I'll stop there.
Go ahead. Go ahead and finish. You good. You good.
I think additionally, maybe even ask them about what were their plans for the week or their plans from the weekend. In my supervision sessions with my interns, I do not allow them off the call without telling me what they did for self-care in that previous week and what they're going to do for self-care in the upcoming week. And it doesn't have to be a whole day. It doesn't even have to be an hour. It could be something as simple as having your favorite snack. It could be something as simple as taking a bubble bath. It could be something as simple as going for a walk in your neighborhood or binge watching your favorite TV show, but something that takes your mind away from everything else that's weighing you down in the world. You need self-care at least once a week.
That's good stuff. Pastor Hardy, come on in here.
Well, Dr. Nelson mentioned that many of the things I was thinking of, though I would add that something my therapist says to me, is there something you're looking forward to? Is there something you're planning in the future to see if people are thinking in terms of futuristic and have the capacity to believe that they can plan and have a right to have something to look forward to? That has worked for me in my mental wellness. I also sometimes will check in with people and ask, do they know if there's anybody that they think I should check in on? Because if the church is supposed to be a family, we talk often about we're a church family. I have learned, and I really try to shape it because I'm not looking for gossip. I'm not interested in gossip. I consider gossip demonic. I'm looking for factual, helpful information that people are willing to share with me about, Pastor, maybe you need to give Sister so-and-so a call. I saw her last week. Can you give her a call? And again, it's all about the sacred space of relationships. I don't give up confidences. I rebuke gossip, but I am interested and recognize that sometimes my church family may have some information and know that there's somebody I need to check on. They don't have to give me all the details. All they need to do is say, Pastor, can you check on Sister Joe? And that's it. I'll call to check, and I'm not going to say, well, someone told me to check on you. That's what family do. We should be looking out for each other.
Thank you. Reverend Pitts? Oh, you've already went. I'm sorry. Marty, please forgive me. I'm sorry. Marty?
It's all good. It's all good. Hey, that's what we do, right? Since Dr. Nelson took my self-care, I had to think of something real quick. So I love alliteration. So I said, how's your routines and your relationships? Routines, what has changed in your life? And then relationship. And I go here, how's your relationship with yourself? Because many of us don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves, let alone to begin to even have a healthy relationship with others. So I want to know, how's your relationship with yourself? And what is yourself telling yourself about yourself? That's all.
Now, you preached real good in under 30 seconds right there. That was, you laid that one out. I mean, I'm mad at you for that, but that was good. Because we don't always be truthful with ourselves. We self-medicate,
right?
Whether it's overeating, whether it's drinking, whether it's smoking, whether it's whatever choice of coping you use, we self-medicate to the extent that it hurts. And then by the time we get under it, we're so far down that we feel like we can't recover. So yes, that is the conversation. Well, listen, family, we are at the 5-minute marker to get out of here. And I want to say thank you to everybody that has chimed in. I want to send a shout out to my sister in ministry, Apostle Harrison. Thank you for being here. To my wives for being on here today. I've got a couple of pushbacks on this evening that says we need a part 2. I want you to know that I've seen your request and I will work on that. And if we have a chance, we will surface this back up and we will do it. But before we go, I want to start with Pastor Hardy. Want to give everyone a chance to tell us where we can find you on social media, a website, Instagram, Twitter, all of that stuff. And if we want to connect with you, how can we do that? And then as we finish, when we get down, we'll start with Pastor Rose, Dr. Nelson, we'll go to Marty, and then to Reverend Pitts. Thank you.
Well, my people have learned to quickly put my email address in the comments section, revroseH@gmail.com. I can be found on Facebook as Rose Hardy, not Rose Hardy, the tattoo artist in Australia that's internationally known, just Rose Hardy of Restoration Temple Ministries. And that's the quick way to find me. And can I just say, real 15-second plug, a panel that talks about trauma.
Got you. That's on my list. I will be in touch with you this week. In fact, I will be in touch with all 5 of us this week about that, because that is the next thing on my list. So we can talk about that. I will be in touch. Thank you, Pastor Rose. Next.
Would that be me? Okay. You can find me on my website, which is the letter L, centercounseling.com, www.thelcentercounseling.com. And on the last tab, you can send a comment or send me an email and it'll come directly to me. My phone number is also listed on my website. Again, the lcentercounseling.com.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Marty?
Thanks so much. Thank you again. On Facebook, I can be reached at Mental Health Matters with Marty. And I also have my season 2 of my podcast, Mental Health Matters with Marty, comes out tomorrow. And that is just talking about, and all this we discussed about is on that podcast today. So that's another thing from God. And on my website at mentalhealthmarty.com.
Thank you so much. Reverend Pitts? We're going to get this button for you. There you go. Let's try that again.
Yeah, all night. Okay, so you Instagram, Facebook, it's jpitts03, but find me at Men Inc. Houston, MENINC Houston.org. There you can find more about our organization. You can email me there. Again, it's www.meninc
Thank you so much. Listen, we are out of time, but we're not out of content. I wanted to stick to this time frame. I want to send a special thank you to all of you that watched on tonight, but I want to send much love out to Pastor Rose Hardy, Reverend Martina Sellers, Dr. LaKanya Nelson, and Reverend Justin Pitts for sharing in this platform with me on tonight. I'm so humbled that you all will share space with this little old country boy who hails from the metropolitan city of Sweet Orange, Texas. I promise you the next time we get together, we're going to do real good. I want to say thank you to everyone who watched. Join us next week. We'll be here, Points of Freedom next week, 6 o'clock, and we will be here again. Thank you so much. And until we meet again, my name is Sean Stewart, Senior Servant, Freedom Church, right here, Houston, Texas. Reverend Pitts, we are out. Thank you so much, family.
Are you looking for a place to worship and to serve authentically? Freedom Church is looking for volunteers to assist with the work of ministry. Areas of opportunity are praise and worship, including singers and musicians, Freedom Cares Outreach Ministry, setup and breakdown crews, as well as sound crew. If you're interested or to get more information, please sign up at www.fchouston.org. Giving at Freedom Church is easy. To give, simply visit our website and click donate, or to give by using cash, simply use the tag $Freedom Church, HOU, or by using PayPal at Freedom Church Houston. For more information on Freedom Church and any events or outreach activities, please visit our website at www.fchouston.org.